Hello, how are you? Today I brought you a recipe for a healthy bread for people living with diabetes. For those who want to control their blood sugar, for those who want to consume less carbohydrate, more good fats, more fiber, more protein. This recipe is amazing. It turns out super tasty, and on top of that, at the end, I'll teach you how to prepare a spread rich in spices and seasonings that are ideal for people living with diabetes. You're going to love it, so stay until the end because you won't want to miss it. Before we start, I want to ask you, do you happen to live with diabetes? Is there someone in your family who has high blood sugar? Write to me down here in the comments. What's your relationship with this? I'll bring more recipes to help you if you have prediabetes. I love to know, so write to me down here in the comments. Remember to like the video. It really helps me out here on the channel. Plus, it shows YouTube that you support the channel and trust my content. And to get the ingredients, just take a look at the description. I always leave everything there to make your life easier. Look how protein rich this bread is. I already have the eggs here, so I'm going to mix them, breaking the yolk with the white. Of course, a whole egg doesn't just have protein, right? The egg white has a lot albumin, which is a very interesting protein with high biological value. That alone is already really good. But the egg yolk is one of the few natural foods that contains vitamin D, which is already a really cool point. It also has choline, which is good for the brain. It has antioxidants, it has vitamins, it has minerals. So the egg is a very nutritious, complete food. It turns into a chick, right? A complete, nutritious, and affordable food. So it's a good way for us to add an interesting protein for breakfast or as an afternoon snack. Even if you ate this bread plain, it would already have more protein and be quite interesting. I'm going to add the ground peanuts here. Look, you can even see that it's more granulated because I processed it in the food processor. So it's a really cool option. If you want to use almond flour, that works too, but I'm using peanuts because I know it's more affordable and easier to use. So look, this already gives a nice touch to our recipe. I'm going to season it with a little salt, a bit of oregano, because I think bread goes well with oregano. This part is optional. If you don't want it, you don't have to add it. I'm going to add a bit of grated mozzarella here. It helps bind everything nicely and also adds more protein and calcium. If you don't want to use it, you can leave it out, okay? If you're allergic or intolerant, it won't really change the bread's texture that much. I'm going to add the baking powder here now to make it easier and avoid those little lumps, which sometimes do not fully dissolve properly, being much harder to completely eliminate. Since this bread doesn't use yeast, it's ready right away. It's super easy, no need to wait for it to rise. And to make it even more nutritious, I'm going to add some grated zucchini here. I grated the zucchini and then squeezed it to remove the excess liquid. I just squeezed it with my hand. That way, you don't need to add salt or anything because I don't want to dehydrate it. I just wanted to get rid of the extra water. Zucchini is really great for people living with diabetes because it's very rich in antioxidants and fiber, which really helps increase the volume and satiety of dishes, helps you feel full for longer. It helps improve blood sugar control in our intestines. And besides having lots of antioxidants, right? Which obviously are very good for people living with diabetes. Let me give this a good mix with the spatula now. And now, what am I going to do? I'm going to take this wonderful bread to bake. After it's ready, I'll come back to make that spread I mentioned to you with spices and ingredients that are super good for people living with diabetes. Look, so I grabbed my baking pan here. I greased it and even put a sheet of parchment paper on the bottom to make sure it won't stick later. I'm going to transfer it and take it to bake. Remember that both zucchini and peanut flour are low in carbohydrates and quite rich in fiber, so they'll help control blood sugar for that reason. So now I'm going to transfer this over to this pan. It's going to bake in the oven at 360 degrees Fahrenheit, and in just a little while, I'll be back. Of course, if you want, you can also cook it in the air fryer or even in the microwave. Tell me, which one do you prefer? Our bread is finishing baking, and I'm going to make the spread I promised you, which also contains some very interesting ingredients for those living with diabetes. For its base, I'm going to use fresh ricotta, not ricotta cream, but actual fresh ricotta, which is a cheese with more protein and less saturated fat. We know that excessive saturated fat is harmful for people living with diabetes because people with uncontrolled diabetes are at higher risk of developing dyslipidemia and elevated cholesterol. So, controlling the amount of saturated fat is important. Ricotta will be the base, and I'm going to add some spices here, some seasonings, to further boost its beneficial effects. So here in our ricotta, I'm going to add a bit of paprika. And paprika is very interesting because it contains carotenoids, which help reduce inflammation associated with insulin resistance, contribute to improving insulin sensitivity, reduce oxidative stress, and even improve eye health. We know that especially for those living with diabetes, this is super important, right? I'm also going to add a bit of turmeric here. Curcumin improves insulin action and it reduces resistance, especially in pre-diabetics, and even reduces inflammatory markers like interleukin, ACE, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and some studies have already shown that it can also help lower glycated hemoglobin, which is super interesting. I'm going to add black pepper, which contains piperine, and that enhances the effects of turmeric. It makes absorption and bioavailability easier. And some studies have also found that piperine can improve insulin sensitivity. Look, that's really interesting. Lastly, I'm going to add a little bit of garlic here. Garlic contains allicin, which improves pancreatic function. Studies have already shown that garlic can help lower fasting blood glucose and improve the lipid profile, which, as I've already told you, is super important for people living with diabetes. Lastly, I'm going to add a little bit of salt because there wasn't any salt in this ricotta, just to get the seasoning right. Now it's ready. The bread is done. It only took 35 minutes, so it's super easy for us to make in our daily routine. I'm going to cut a few pieces here so we can get a better look at the texture inside. Look at this. Make it at home. You're going to love it for sure. I can't wait to try it with our spread. I want to know if you're going to make it with the spread also. If you have any other ideas, I'd love to see your comment. Look, I've got our spread here, and I'm going to put a generous amount on because I love it. And I'll show you the texture of the bread. Look at this. Make it at home. You're going to love it. Now I'll show you without the spread, so you can see what it's like if you eat it plain. Look at the texture. What I like about this recipe is that besides everything else, it's a delicious way for you to add zucchini to your daily routine. It won't have a strong zucchini flavor. So if you know someone who's a bit more resistant or selective with food, share this video. It could be a way to help people introduce more vegetables into their diet, into their daily lives. Remember to like the video. It really helps me out. Let's try it now. It's hard to say which one is better. The bread on its own is amazing, and the spread complements it perfectly. Make it at home. I'm sure you'll love it. Let me know what you think. See you next time. Bye.